Hello, and welcome to the online instructional module for U.S. History. Today's topic is better feedback, what it is, and how to give it without losing sleep. The target standards are 1A and 2B, although this strategy is very broad, can be used to performance tasks or assessments of any kind, of any standard, and truth be told, 1A and 2D are only briefly mentioned in this presentation, but you will see some examples toward the end. So, we've all been there a million times. A student writes something good on her paper, and we write, good. Or a student does something we think is nice on her paper, and we write, nice. Or if we want to let a student know that what they did was really, really good, really, really impressive, we write, wow. Sometimes the opposite is true. If something they wrote is totally off, doesn't make sense, isn't clear, isn't accurate, isn't responsive to the prompt, doesn't cut it, we write, huh? But ladies and gentlemen, this sort of feedback doesn't cut it. Let's think about what we're trying to accomplish when we offer feedback. And this could be oral or written. This presentation will focus mostly on written feedback, but the same principles apply. We give students feedback, which research shows is extremely beneficial. Every educational researcher you're going to come across who's done research on the topic says that feedback is critical to improving student performance, especially when it's immediate feedback. In other words, we get it back to them soon after the performance is rendered. What are we trying to accomplish? We want to shape the student's performance in some way. If it's good, we want to shape it more in that direction. If it's bad, we want to shape it in the opposite direction. If it's off tack, we want to shift it into the right direction. We want to communicate what our expectations are. Are the students meeting them or not? And to what extent? Is what they've done great? Is it good? Is it slightly off? Is it really off? Students need to understand what we want of them, and our feedback is a good way to convey that. We offer feedback to identify strengths and weaknesses. Often what students turn in is uneven. Some of it is good, some of it isn't. And of course there are a lot of shades of gray, but in there we identify strengths and weaknesses, and a huge part of our role as teachers is to help students do the same. We offer feedback to provide motivation. If we let students know that they are doing the right thing and are to be saluted, or if they're not doing the right thing and they need to shift gears or step it up or redo it, well, feedback can be a way to stoke the motivational fires in students. We know that when something is written, it can have a more lasting effect than something that is spoken. If the students read it and refer to it, they have it in their possession, as opposed to a comment that may or may not stick inside their head. And finally, generally speaking, we issue feedback to help promote learning and growth. And this refers to more than just content knowledge, but skills, mindset, thinking skills, habits of mind. All these things can be addressed with good feedback. Well, this is a lot to accomplish with some strokes of our pen. It really is, especially when you've got X number of classes and X number of students. It's a whole lot to accomplish, and we want to do it all. We have to do it all. We need to do it all. The students need us to do it all, but it takes a lot of time. And if we offer a lot of written feedback, we're going to get carpal tunnel syndrome in our wrists, and that's not good. How to achieve this without spending tons of time? it is a balancing act. We want to do justice to our role as guides and experts, while at the same time acknowledging that it can easily spiral out of control and dominate your nights and weekends if you're not careful. It can be very time consuming, and we have to avoid that. Well, there's a way to do it. If we reduce it to its essential function, the goal of feedback is to provide students with a tool that he or she can use to improve. If it doesn't accomplish that, then we're wasting our time. And as we have been discussing, time is precious. We have to offer students something that they can actually use. Not in a general sense, but in a specific sense. If we tell them good job, that counts for something. It really does. And it's important to acknowledge a good job done by students. But here we're going to talk about more specifics, the nitty-gritty that we do every day as we review student work. We're going to use feedback codes. These are a number of different pieces of feedback. On the second column you'll see positive feedback. On the third column on the right you'll see negative feedback. Some having to do with mechanics, other feedback having to do with content, and some having to do with work completion. These are typical comments that you may find yourself wanting to make in some version or another, but again, the more you write, the more feedback you want to offer students, the longer it takes. So we are going to be looking for more efficiency, and that's where these codes come into play. If we take a brief look at the mechanics category, we see some pretty typical things that we're going to observe in student work. Again, whether it's good or bad, well, instead of writing use complete sentences, on the student's paper we write M4, mechanics comment number 4. If they misuse a word, then we don't have to spend 4, 5, 6, 7 words explaining that to them. We just write M9, mechanics feedback number 9. Or, on the flip side, if they've done well to incorporate a vocabulary term in their response, then instead of just writing good, because they might not know why we think it's good, we write M2, mechanics feedback number 2. Moving on to content, a brief look. There's a lot that we need to do to address student performance in the way of mastering content. Maybe they're displaying critical thinking skills. Well, we write C4. Bam, got it. Maybe they've gone into great detail. Maybe their explanation is thorough, and we like that. We want to identify it, make sure the students know that that's the type of thing they should be doing. C7. Maybe they are too general in their response. Maybe they say that the colonists went through a lot of changes. Well, that's true, of course, but far too vague to do anybody much good, so we write C12. Work completion, you've got a few different things there. Maybe we see that they put in a lot of effort into their product, and that could mean a lot of different things depending on what you've asked them to do, but we can acknowledge that with a W1, work completion feedback number 1, and that may be true of some parts of their work and not others, so we don't just write it at the top of their page, but in the particular spots where we see it. Maybe we think that a response or an aspect of their work is so good that it could be used as a student model, W3. Wouldn't that be a great thing to tell a student without spending a lot of time to write it? Or on the flip side, we might see problems with their work completion. Namely, it's incomplete, or a particular part of it is incomplete. So W5. Maybe they didn't structure it the right way, didn't set it up the right way, didn't format it the right way. W7. What you're going to do is have students refer to this all semester long, and they will know, because they'll have this at their fingertips, what you mean when you write these codes. It's going to save a lot of time. It's going to introduce sort of a common language, and it's going to be useful to them as a tool to reflect and improve in a way that general comments do not. And we're going to do all this without spending tons of time. Before long, you will probably come to memorize some of these codes and know them by heart. If you use them on most assignments, or every assignment, you're going to start to know some of them by heart and not even need to refer to this every single time you want to make a comment. But even if you do, it's very fast to write one letter and a number to convey something very specific and very meaningful to a student. Now we'll look at an example. Question number 2 on this short answer quiz asked, what were the effects of the Great Awakening on colonists' lives? Student response is vague. Student response lacks specifics. Student response needs to go further. So we note that quickly. Question number 3 asked, how did the system of mercantilism benefit Britain? Student response is not wrong, technically, but it's not really right either, because it doesn't tell us anything that is specific enough for us to understand if the student grasped the concept. Products were produced and goods were traded. Well, yes, they were, but we need more. We need examples. We need elaboration. We see a student skimming the surface rather than truly explaining what the topic is. And instead of just writing a big X over the number 3, or instead of saying that the student has earned 0 of 3 points for this response, or whatever the case may be, we are going to provide meaningful feedback quickly and easily. We're going to do it in a way that they can understand what they need to do to improve. So this system should be put in play at the beginning of a semester, ideally, because you are establishing your procedures, your policies, your requirements, how you want things done in your classroom. So this should be incorporated as part of your system. You're going to print it out for all the students and distribute it in week 1 along with all your other week 1 materials. You may even post it in your classroom so everybody can refer to it whenever they like. You're going to go through it with them. You don't want to assume they know what the comments mean. Some of them they will, of course. Others they may not. You want to explain it. You want to make sure everybody knows what you're talking about when you provide them with certain commentary. That again is going to be consistent throughout the year. That's the beauty of it. Also in week 1 you want to start using it. You want to get them in the habit of being addressed in this way. You want to have them start to think along those lines. You want them to start reflecting. And speaking of which, they're going to start it in week 1, but they're going to continue for the rest of the semester. You are going to put this in place in week 1 and keep it going consistently for the entire time you have the students if it's going to work to maximum effect. So you'll need to provide more copies because some students will lose theirs. If you require them to keep a notebook or an interactive notebook of some kind, a binder, well then this could go on the inside cover. It should be sort of front and center. It should be something they refer to and have easily at their fingertips at all times. But students will lose things, so you're going to want to upload it to your website so they can print it out or make copies yourself, because you know that it's important enough they can't be without it. And also, soon after the semester starts, but continuing on through the entire semester, you're going to help students use these pieces of feedback to self-reflect. You're going to help them understand that if they see a lot of C3 comments, or they see a lot of W5 comments, well then they've got to take stock of what they're doing and figure out how to correct it, how to improve those particular aspects. Not just it's good or it's not good, but what about it? And if they start seeing certain comments pop up routinely, then they're able to figure out what they've got and perhaps how to do it better. You might even have students write something up after a few weeks of class. Have them do a little T-chart for you. What are some of the comments that they've seen routinely? You could explicitly have them take stock of the feedback that they've received. Have them add up. Have them add up. What are the most common feedbacks that you've gotten? Are you getting certain pieces of feedback every time? Do you have 18 of them? These sorts of things can be tallied and useful for students to take an objective look at what they've done and how we are perceiving it. So again, the goal of feedback is to provide students with something they can use as a tool to improve, to reflect, to grow. And this system is a way to do it without having you spend a whole lot of time, drive yourself crazy, or feel like you are writing the same things over and over and over, because that gets old, and to be honest, it decreases our enthusiasm for doing so. We get tired of it. So much easier for us, and just as useful, if not more so, for the students to use these codes. So this is a better, more efficient, more productive way to use feedback.